My cousin was a textbook example of a saintly figure. She often used me to appear generous to others. Relatives would ask her for money, and she'd agree, but then ask me to transfer it for her. And just like that, she became the good person in everyone's eyes. Afterward, those relatives refused to pay it back, and I was left with a 100,000 yuan debt. My cousin Hannah's best friend had nowhere to live and sought her help. Hannah directly brought that person to live in my new apartment. As a result, the friend not only stayed for free for 2 years, but also ruined the property, forcing me to spend 80,000 yuan on repairs. At work, Hannah insisted on treating a pregnant colleague to a cold bubble tea, then made me pay for it. Unexpectedly, after drinking the tea, the colleague suddenly had a miscarriage. Not only did I have to compensate over 100,000 yuan, but I was also beaten to a pulp by the colleague's husband. Hannah was always the good person, but I always bore the negative consequences. Because she had once saved my life, I silently endured everything. It wasn't until after I died that I overheard her bragging, "Lin is such an idiot. She always thought I was the one who saved her from the accident and willingly let me exploit her for so long. Too bad I can't exploit her anymore." When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn, back to the day my manipulative cousin forced me to transfer money. "Lin, hurry up and wash the dishes. Your aunt and the others will be here soon." My mother's voice suddenly echoed in my ears, leaving me a little disoriented. In my panic, I unconsciously touched my neck. Soft, smooth, pale skin, a warm, normal body. I immediately understood that I had been reborn. I carried the dishes out to the pond's edge, washing them mechanically as if in a trance. In my previous life, on this very day, my aunt had brought my cousin Hannah to our house for a meal. My uncle and aunt also came. I had thought it was just a family gathering, but unexpectedly, Uncle suddenly opened his mouth and asked to borrow money. After Uncle spoke, the cheerful atmosphere immediately vanished. Everyone fell silent. After all, not everyone was wealthy enough to lend money, and no one knew how much Uncle wanted to borrow. But Hannah broke the stalemate. "Uncle, how much do you need? Let me see if I have enough on me." Uncle's eyes lit up. "You know, your cousin is getting married soon, and we're short 100,000 yuan for the betrothal gift." Hannah smiled casually, as if it were no big deal, and said, 100,000 yuan isn't much, it's just that I don't have that much cash on me." Then Hannah suddenly looked at me. "Sis, could you transfer the money to Uncle for me? I'll pay you back in a few days." At that moment, my mind was filled with question marks. Hannah winked at me as a signal. Initially, I intended to ignore her, but then I suddenly remembered the day I walked out of the company door. A piece of glass unexpectedly fell from above. Just as it was about to hit me, someone pushed me. My head hit the wall and I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, and Hannah was sitting by my bedside. Because Hannah and I worked for the same company, she said she was the one who pushed me away. Seeing the scratch on her arm from the glass shard, I immediately believed her story. So, when Hannah winked at me, I couldn't flat out refuse. In my confusion, I immediately transferred 100,000 yuan to Uncle. Uncle was so overjoyed he nearly cried, repeatedly squeezing Hannah's hand and thanking her profusely. "Thank you, Hannah, you truly are my lucky star. From now on, I'll definitely tell my son to treat you well." Hannah happily replied, "Oh, it's nothing big, Uncle, these are just small matters. We're family, we have to help each other, right?" Seeing this, Uncle immediately praised her as kind-hearted and understanding. They all happily feasted and drank, only I felt strange. Days passed, but Hannah still hadn't paid me back. I had no way to subtly remind her. Hannah seemed to have completely forgotten about it. Not only her, even Uncle didn't remember clearly. I politely asked Uncle again, but he said he borrowed from Hannah, not from me. I nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. Without a written loan agreement, they kept pushing the responsibility back and forth, refusing to admit they owed me anything. Hannah denied borrowing 100,000 yuan from me, while Uncle claimed he borrowed from Hannah and that Hannah had already paid me back. My parents even went to Uncle's house to demand payment, but in the end, they couldn't get it back and argued to the point of almost severing ties. I was lost in thought when the doorbell rang. I didn't want to answer it, so my mother, holding a ladle, went to greet the guests. Hannah, carrying a bag of fruit, cheerfully greeted my mother. Behind her were my uncle and aunt and Hannah's mother. Seeing them reminded me of the suffering of my previous life. I suddenly felt a bit nauseous, and my expression darkened considerably. Noticing I didn't seem very friendly, Hannah deliberately asked me, "Lynn, do you not like it when everyone comes over for dinner?" My mother quickly interjected to smooth things over. "Of course your sister likes it. Lynn was so excited this morning." Hannah was always more generous and outgoing than I was. She was an extrovert while I was an introvert. Whenever Hannah joked, I usually remained silent. Her mother pretended to scold her. "Don't talk nonsense." My mother quickly invited them to sit at the table. Hannah's mother was always energetic, livening up the atmosphere. Only uncle and aunt quietly ate. I knew they were waiting for their moment. Sure enough, halfway through the meal, uncle hesitantly opened his mouth. Does anyone here, uncle, aunt, have 100,000 yuan they could lend me?" My mother and the others were immediately startled, exchanging glances, speechless. Our family's financial situation was average. My parents had saved a little money to buy me an apartment, but normally, anyone who asked to borrow money would be told we had none. Hannah's family was also like us. In my previous life, when I went to demand the money from Hannah, she lied and said she had none. Only after I checked did I find out she had 200,000 yuan in her Alipay account. She just didn't want to pay me back. Uncle, seeing no one reply, looked a bit embarrassed. I saw Hannah's lips move. Surely she was about to use me as a convenient tool, just like in my previous life. I immediately spoke up first. "Uncle, I was actually planning to lend you money, but unfortunately, I just lent it to a classmate the other day." Uncle lowered his head in disappointment. I glanced at Hannah, then smiled and comforted Uncle. "Don't be sad, Uncle. Although I don't have the money, Hannah does. Just a few days ago, she was bragging to me about receiving a bonus of over 200,000 yuan." Uncle's eyes immediately lit up. Hannah and her mother both turned pale. "Where would I get 200,000 from?" Hannah snapped, trembling with anger. Her mother also quickly denied it. "That's right, Hannah. Our family only earns a few dollars a month, just enough to get by." I didn't bother arguing with them. I just walked over, took Hannah's phone, and using my memory from my previous life's checks, entered the correct unlock password. I tapped on Alipay. The screen displayed the account balance, 203,460.11 yuan. Before Hannah could react, I held the phone out to Uncle. Uncle and Aunt's eyes lit up even more. "Hannah, you don't want to help your uncle?" Hannah quickly snatched her phone back, a little embarrassed. "It's not that I don't want to." She looked at everyone. I had acted too fast, leaving her no excuse to refuse. Seeing Hannah's predicament, I understandingly cut in. "Uncle, of course Hannah will lend you the money. We're all family, how could we not help each other?" Then I looked at Hannah, intentionally saying vaguely, "Hannah, just transfer the money to Uncle for now. When my friend pays me back, I'll transfer it to you." Hearing me say that, Hannah thought she was only temporarily lending money to Uncle, so she reluctantly transferred 100,000 yuan. Her mother watched her daughter transfer 100,000 yuan to Uncle, her expression extremely complex. After receiving the money, Uncle happily took my hand and thanked me profusely. "Thank you, Lynn, you truly are my lucky star. From now on, I'll definitely tell my son to treat you well." Unexpectedly, the praises that belonged to Hannah in my previous life now belonged to me. The wheel of fortune truly turns. Hannah was so furious she couldn't eat. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and excused herself to leave. Her mother quickly said goodbye to everyone and rushed after Hannah. After they left, I looked at the intact sum of money in my account and felt a sense of relief. Hannah deserved to experience this suffocating feeling. Moreover, she probably didn't know that this was just the beginning. I had 300,000 yuan, plus the money from selling my small apartment and additional money from my parents, which was enough to buy a 4-bedroom apartment outright. I didn't tell Hannah's mother about buying or selling the apartment. My parents planned to invite Hannah's family over for a meal, but I disagreed. Initially, my parents were confused. "Lynn, buying a house is happy news. We should invite everyone over for a meal, no matter what." I was sitting at my computer, working on documents, so I could only vaguely explain the reason to my parents. "Mom, times have changed. Sometimes we need to live a little more modestly, just in case someone gets jealous and wants to harm us." My father was startled. "What? Are there really people that wicked in this world?" I smiled at my father. "Dad, it's very important to be wary of others. To succeed, you need to keep secrets. Too many loose ends can lead to mistakes. It's best if our family stays a little humble." My parents followed my advice and didn't mention inviting anyone over for dinner again. A little over a month later, Hannah suddenly came to find me at work. She was extremely angry when she saw me casually drinking coffee. "Lynn, has your classmate paid you back yet? When are you going to give me back my 100,000 yuan? Hannah angrily turned and called Uncle. The result was just like in my previous life. Uncle refused to admit he borrowed the money. He even said it was my money, making Hannah so furious she almost fainted. She wanted Uncle to write a promissory note, but he refused. Hannah angrily hung up the phone and turned to demand it from me, but I still didn't admit I'd said such a thing. In the end, she had to go home and bring her mother to Uncle's house. They argued for a long time, eventually leaving unhappy. After all, Uncle had refused to pay it back. Hannah even called the police, but the police just shook their heads. They had no promissory note, and the tangled debt among family members couldn't be clearly explained in just a few sentences. The police could only leave, advising the mother and daughter that they could sue if necessary, but without sufficient evidence, any lawsuit would be futile. Hannah angrily cut off ties with Uncle's family. She then frantically rushed to me. Seeing that I wouldn't admit to the loan, she began to use her trump card. Lynn, have you forgotten that I saved your life? What? Is your life not worth 100,000 yuan? If Hannah hadn't said it, I would have almost forgotten about it. I looked at her coldly. Are you sure you were the one who saved me? Hearing me question her like that, Hannah suddenly flinched, a flicker of panic in her eyes. But Hannah quickly composed herself and asserted, if it wasn't me then who? You saw my arm was cut by the glass shard. That wound was from saving you. I didn't rush to deny it but just asked her, so, do you want to go watch the security camera footage with me? When you claimed someone else's credit, didn't you feel guilty? Did you think that boy wasn't an employee of our company, so you could just arbitrarily take credit? Hannah was stunned, hesitating slightly. How? How did you know it was a boy? How foolish. I was just testing her and she exposed herself. I burst out laughing. Of course, I went to the security room to review the footage. But in reality, I hadn't watched the camera footage. It was only after I died that I learned the person who pushed me was a stranger, a young boy. Moreover, so much time had passed that the surveillance cameras no longer retained that video. He must have had some business at my company and happened to see the glass falling as he was leaving, so he instinctively pushed me aside. Unexpectedly, my head hit the wall and I fainted on the spot. When he was about to take me to the hospital, Hannah suddenly appeared. She claimed I was her cousin and that she would take care of me, coaxing the boy to leave. Just then, the taxi he had called arrived. After confirming Hannah would take me to the hospital, he quickly got into the taxi and left. From then on, that boy never came to my company again. Hannah, thinking that if she claimed credit for saving my life, she could exploit me, deliberately took a glass shard and cut her own arm. In my previous life, she succeeded, but in this life, I exposed her. Hannah was stunned into silence. Lynn, I cut her off. I don't want to investigate who saved me, but don't use this as an excuse to demand I return 100,000 yuan to you. Otherwise, let's just cut ties. In the end, Hannah still didn't dare to come and demand her money from me. We simply had less contact, but it didn't quite sever our relationship. She went to Uncle's house to demand the money many times, always returning empty-handed. The money was a lost cause, a ship sailed. Every day, Hannah went to work fuming, while I was leisurely and at peace. My life continued smoothly until Hannah brought a girl to my house for dinner. Seeing her, I recognized her. Chloe, the one who ruined my house in my previous life. Back then, Hannah didn't even introduce Chloe to me. She just directly brought her to my newly bought apartment and had her move her luggage in. At that time, I trusted Hannah too much, so she always knew I hid a spare key under the doormat outside. Thus, Chloe lived there for a month before I even found out. When I opened the door, I was completely stunned. I had no idea a stranger was living in my house and messing it up. I was about to call the police, but Chloe quickly stopped me, saying Hannah had given her permission to stay. She even called Hannah right in front of me. When Hannah arrived and saw the whole apartment filled with trash, she was a bit embarrassed. Then she feigned ignorance. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Chloe's parents are very ill, and she sent all her money back home, so she couldn't afford rent and was evicted. I thought you had an apartment here that you weren't using yet, so I brought her here to stay for a while. Consider it a good deed. Chloe wiped away tears, chiming in, That's right, sis. If Hannah hadn't brought me here, I really wouldn't know where to go. These words sounded strange to me, so I flatly refused. Look at what you've done to my house. Doesn't it look like a dump? Hannah turned and pretended to scold her. Chloe, you need to be more diligent. Girls must keep things clean. Chloe nodded desperately. I know, Hannah, I'll pay attention to cleaning from now on. Seeing them play good cop, bad cop, completely treating me as an outsider, I angrily calculated. Then let's go by market price. Monthly rent is 1,500 yuan. Since you're Hannah's best friend, just give me 1,000 yuan. The moment Chloe heard she had to pay rent, she started crying, asking Hannah, "Hannah, didn't you say I wouldn't have to pay rent? I don't have any money." Hannah looked at me with dissatisfaction. "Lynn, I saved your life. How can you treat my friend like this? She said she doesn't have money for rent. Can't you be more understanding?" As she spoke, she shoved her injured arm in front of me, making me dizzy. I thought, well, I didn't need the apartment yet, so I reluctantly agreed to let Chloe stay. As a result, she lived in my house for free for 2 whole years. When Chloe moved out, I discovered that all the walls had turned black with grime, the curtains were as dark as night, and the entire apartment was submerged in trash, with no place to even step. Even the kitchen was covered in dried oil and yellow stains. I had to hire a professional cleaning crew to clean the house, costing an additional 80,000 yuan. I let Chloe stay for 2 years without taking a single penny from her, yet when she moved out, she still ruined my house like that. Anyone would be furious. So in this life, I quickly sold that apartment just to see how they would love and cherish each other now. Halfway through the meal, Hannah abruptly changed the subject. "Lynn, why is someone already living in your apartment?" Chloe was incredibly meek, just quietly eating. It was hard to believe she was the same messy, sloppy person. "I sold that place a long time ago. What's wrong?" Chloe looked up at me, stunned. Hannah also flinched in shock, her face turning incredibly ugly. Chloe's parents are sick, and she sent all her money back home, so she can't afford rent and was evicted. I wanted to ask you to let her stay there temporarily, but when I got there, I couldn't find the key, and when I knocked, I found out someone else was already living in the apartment. Hearing that, my parents exchanged glances, finally understanding why I had insisted on selling that apartment earlier. I looked sadly at Chloe. "I'm sorry, I can't help you either." Chloe quickly waved her hand, struggling to say a few words. It's okay. Hannah still didn't give up. "But I promised I'd find her a place. How about she moves in here?" My mother, finally unable to bear it, immediately and delicately refused. "Hannah, that's not a good idea. Living with adults like us would make your friend uncomfortable." Hannah was about to persuade my mother again when I directly cut her off. "Why would you say that? How can Chloe squeeze in with my family? Didn't you just buy an apartment 2 months ago? You haven't moved in yet anyway, so just let Chloe move in there for now." 2 months ago, after Hannah bought her apartment, she deliberately came to me to brag, saying she had her own place like mine now. Now, being exposed by me like this, she almost scowled. After a moment of hesitation, Hannah stammered, My house was just renovated, and the formaldehyde smell is still very strong. It's not suitable for living." Chloe quickly interjected, "Hannah, you don't want to help me, do you? It's okay, I'll just go beg other people." I quickly offered a solution. "What's the big deal? I know how to quickly eliminate formaldehyde smell. You can move in right away, don't worry too much." A glimmer of hope appeared in Chloe's eyes. She feigned naivete and asked me, "Really?" I immediately affirmed again, "Really? Now I'll take you to buy formaldehyde removal spray. The store owner said you can move in right after spraying. Plus, Hannah's apartment was already decorated a month ago. You just need to bring your luggage and you can live there." Having said that, I enthusiastically pulled Hannah and Chloe out the door. Chloe gratefully held my hand, while Hannah stiffly followed behind. I had long had my eye on those formaldehyde removal sprays and had been waiting for this day for a very long time. After buying the supplies, Hannah reluctantly led us to her small apartment. Chloe, seeing the brand new apartment, turned to me and thanked me profusely. Hannah's face was flushed red. Finally, still unwilling, she spoke up. "Chloe, the rent around here is 1,600 yuan a month. You can just give me 1,000 yuan a month." Chloe's deer-like eyes widened in shock as she looked back at Hannah. I feigned reluctance and spoke up for her. "Hannah, didn't you just say you were helping Chloe because she had no money for rent? And now you're making her pay rent? How can she afford it?" Chloe quickly nodded, tears streaming down her face. "That's right, Hannah, you know my situation." Hannah's face darkened even further, her eyes glaring at me as if she wanted to kill me. I chuckled coldly in my heart. "Didn't you treat me the same way in my previous life? Why are you so uncomfortable when it's your turn?" "Indeed, a knife doesn't hurt unless it cuts your own flesh, right?" Hannah weakly protested. "But this is my new house?" I smiled and praised her. "This just shows how kind you are to Chloe. She'll be very grateful to you later." Chloe, standing beside me, immediately chimed in. That's right, that's right. Hannah couldn't find another excuse to refuse. What excuse could she possibly use now? She had bragged herself into this, so she had to deal with it herself, even if she wanted to cry. Seeing that Hannah had agreed, Chloe immediately hugged me, repeatedly thanking me. "Thank you, Lynn, you're such a good person." I glanced at Hannah, whose face was as black as thunder. Chloe successfully moved into Hannah's apartment. Every day at work, Hannah would walk past my desk with a sullen face, probably furious inside, but with no opportunity to vent her anger. Today, I bought a box of strawberry ice cream to share with my colleagues, and Hannah happened to see it. She quickly scurried over, wanting to help me carry the box upstairs. I refused immediately, because a similar thing had happened in my previous life. That time, I had just bought a box of golden peaches and was taking them out of the car when she happened to pass by. Hannah said she would help me carry them so I could go find a parking spot first. I trusted her without a doubt. The result was that when I got into the office, I found my colleagues already eating the golden peaches. They were eating and thanking Hannah. "Hannah is so kind, she even invited us to eat fruit." That's right, that's right. I love golden peaches the most, but they're too expensive. I usually don't dare to buy them. Hannah is truly a beautiful and kind little fairy. Hannah wasn't ashamed at all. She humbly said, "It's just a small thing, these golden peaches aren't worth much." I stood next to her, absolutely furious. After that incident, I called Hannah out and asked her why she did it. She even acted wronged, replying, "I just wanted to help you carry your things upstairs." But then they saw me carrying the fruit and immediately thought I bought it all. I couldn't really explain it clearly. At that moment, I was so angry I felt blood rush to my head. From then on, I never allowed her to touch my belongings again. Otherwise, I feared that every time I would pay and Hannah would be the good person. This time, I bought strawberry ice cream, and she wanted to steal the credit again, but I absolutely wouldn't give Hannah that chance. I would carry it up myself. I wanted them to remember me, so that when I needed support from colleagues, someone would stand up and help. Today, our department had a new person transferred from administration. Seeing her walk in, hugging a cardboard box, I trembled with fear. Although she wasn't wearing maternity clothes yet, I recognized her at a glance. Sarah. She was the one who drank the cold bubble tea, had a miscarriage right in the office, and caused me to be strangled to death. When she came over to greet me, I didn't enthusiastically help her arrange her things as in my previous life. I just nodded coldly and then paid no further attention to Sarah. On the contrary, in this life, Hannah was very friendly with Sarah. She constantly helped her arrange things, even though their workstations were clearly quite far apart. I didn't care if they got close. In this life, they wouldn't use me as their ATM again. Hannah started complaining to me about Chloe, her words tinged with blame. "It's all your fault, Lynn. Why did you encourage Chloe to stay at my house?" Now the house is full of trash, even the walls have turned black. I feigned surprise. "Are you serious? But she's a girl." Hannah's face was extremely grim. Before this, Chloe and I never lived together. I didn't know she was such a lazy person. Moreover, I even discovered she brought men home. It makes me furious. Inside, I felt very happy, but outwardly I comforted her. "Be a little understanding, consider it a good deed. Chloe will surely be grateful to you later." Hannah still wasn't cheered up at all and continued to blame me. "If it weren't for you, my new house wouldn't be ruined, and now I have no way to get rid of Chloe." "Oh, isn't that strange? If I hadn't sold my house, wouldn't my asterisk house be the one getting ruined? Why are you blaming me? Besides, Chloe is asterisk your best friend, not mine. What does this have to do with me?" Hannah's face turned beet red with embarrassment. After saying that, I ignored her and went back to work. After that, she didn't dare to complain to me anymore. She only dared to secretly grumble to a few colleagues, badmouthing Chloe while trying to figure out how to get rid of her. Unexpectedly, one colleague actually came up with a solution. Hannah heard it and immediately went back to implement it. A month later, Chloe packed her bags and moved out, but Hannah was still on the verge of tears. Hannah sent photos of the apartment to her colleagues to complain, but accidentally sent them to me instead. The entire apartment looked like a giant dump. On the blackened walls, there were several crude drawings. There was no space to step on the floor, and every few steps, there were discarded 3-wolf cigarette butts. Compared to the ruined state of my house in my previous life, this was only worse, not better. In this life, Chloe even brazenly brought her boyfriend home to make a mess. I was truly speechless. Hannah realized she had sent the photos to the wrong person and quickly recalled the message. But I had already seen everything and spent the whole day laughing until my stomach hurt. A few days later, my mother told me that Hannah's mother had complained to her, saying it cost over 100,000 yuan to clean up Hannah's apartment. Hannah's mother was so angry she couldn't sleep. She even cursed Hannah for being foolish, letting that useless person live in her own home. The new house belonged to Hannah, but she hadn't even moved in yet, and it was already ruined like that. It was truly unlucky. My mother just smiled, consoling her with platitudes like money gone, person safe. But deep down, Mom understood that if I hadn't sold that apartment, we would have suffered a heavy loss. Afterward, my mother kept praising me for my foresight, and that evening, she even cooked a sumptuous meal to treat me. Hannah took a few days off, probably busy redecorating her house. Because Sarah was pregnant, her husband, David, often came to the company to bring her meals. He would carefully instruct her not to eat snacks from outside, fearing it would affect the baby in her womb. Sarah always looked envious when she saw others eating snacks and drinking bubble tea, but she was too shy to ask for food. Some colleagues wouldn't casually offer food to pregnant women, fearing trouble if something went wrong. But there were also some who had no reservations, like Hannah. I thought it wasn't that she was unaware of the risks, she just wanted to harm me. It was like that in my previous life, and it was like that in this life too. This afternoon, Hannah suddenly suggested everyone order bubble tea. Because everyone was tired and sluggish, sweet drinks were just right to help them perk up. So, apart from Sarah and me, everyone raised their hands in approval. Sarah didn't dare to drink, and I didn't want to participate. Having seen the mistakes of my previous life, how could I fall into Hannah's trap again? Hannah was extremely displeased when she saw that Sarah and I weren't drinking. I made an excuse that I had my period and didn't want cold drinks. Sarah said she was pregnant and couldn't drink it. Hannah immediately stood up. So what if you're pregnant? Pregnant women can't drink bubble tea? Don't worry, I've seen many pregnant women drink bubble tea online. What's there to be afraid of if you only drink it occasionally? Today, my treat. Sarah was still a little hesitant, but Hannah opened her phone and searched for videos of pregnant women drinking bubble tea for her to watch. Only then did Sarah feel reassured and replied, "Okay, I'll just have 1 cup then." Sarah had been craving bubble tea for a long time. Now that someone was giving her an opportunity, how could she miss it? After persuading Sarah, Hannah suddenly turned and called me. "Lynn, use your phone to place the order." My phone? Hello, what? I'll be right there. Hannah was only halfway through her sentence when my phone's ringtone blared. I immediately picked up, walking and talking on the phone, quickly stepping out the door. Hannah stared after me in surprise, her mind still trying to process what happened. At that moment, someone urged her. "Hurry up, Hannah, we're so thirsty." "Just use your phone to order. No need to wait for Lynn anyway, she's not drinking bubble tea." Yeah, hurry up and order the bubble tea." Hannah, dazed by the urging, had no choice but to use her phone to order bubble tea for everyone. When they were almost done drinking their bubble tea, I deliberately returned to the office, carrying a stack of documents. Actually, that call was from a friend I had asked to call me. The moment I saw Hannah persuading Sarah, I told my friend to time it and call me so I'd have an excuse to leave. Seeing their bubble tea cups almost empty, I glanced at Sarah. Sarah was slightly distracted, staring at her computer screen, her forehead covered in sweat. One hand clutched her stomach, her face pale, breathing heavily. A familiar feeling flashed through my mind. Sarah had shown these same symptoms in my previous life. Half an hour later, as everyone was diligently working, Sarah suddenly screamed, my stomach hurts so much." With that, she collapsed to the floor, clutching her abdomen and writhing in pain. Currently, Sarah was less than 3 months pregnant, still in a critical stage. That's why David had warned her not to eat indiscriminately. The surrounding colleagues were terrified and didn't know what to do. I also pretended to be scared like everyone else, neither stepping forward to help Sarah nor even calling an ambulance. In my previous life, although Sarah's miscarriage was very pitiful, I still remembered that she and her in-laws extorted money from me, leading to David assaulting and strangling me to death. Consider it my revenge on Sarah. After all, her child couldn't be saved anyway. It wasn't until a manager heard the commotion and rushed over that everyone remembered to call 120. Sarah was lifted onto a stretcher, and the ambulance door closed. No one from my department went with her. Sarah had only transferred to our department a few days ago. Everyone was still unfamiliar with her. Only a few close colleagues of Sarah's got into the ambulance with her. Hannah certainly couldn't go. She was guilty and just wanted to hide in a corner, hoping her colleagues wouldn't see her. But hiding was useless. Even if Hannah didn't go to the hospital, Sarah would still believe Hannah caused her miscarriage. News of Sarah's miscarriage quickly spread throughout the company. Everyone at work was buzzing with gossip, and eventually, everyone came to the same conclusion. It was because Hannah insisted on inviting Sarah to drink cold bubble tea, which led to Sarah's miscarriage. Hannah kept going around trying to explain, but sadly, no one listened. After all, they just wanted to drink a cup of bubble tea. No one wanted trouble, so they all unanimously pushed the blame onto Hannah. David and his parents furiously rushed to the company, causing a scene. They happened to see Hannah trying to argue. "It's because Sarah was greedy for food and drink, not my fault," colleagues loudly blamed her. "At that time, you clearly persuaded Sarah to drink bubble tea, didn't you?" Hearing this, David immediately lunged forward, grabbed Hannah's hair, and repeatedly punched her with his fists. His parents also rushed in, kicking and punching, cursing and demanding Hannah compensate them. Hannah was beaten so hard she screamed, "I want to call the police. It has nothing to do with me. Why should I compensate you?" I sneered. If that answer was useful, would I have died such a tragic death in my previous life? Sure enough, David flew into a rage, slapping Hannah across the face. He gritted his teeth and said, "You want to call the police? Let me tell you, I also want to call the police. Don't think I don't know your phone has the order history. Everyone here can testify that you persuaded my wife to drink that bubble tea." His parents aggressively threatened, "You'd best obediently transfer 100,000 yuan to us, and we'll spare your life. Otherwise, after we beat you, we'll find people to beat your parents too." Hannah was already guilty, and now hearing that she could escape this trouble by just compensating 100,000 yuan, she immediately wavered. In the end, she tremblingly transferred 100,000 yuan to the Law family. With Hannah's face bruised and battered, David and his parents kept their word and left. Hannah watched their retreating backs with bitter resentment, tears streaming down her face. Seeing her colleagues coldly standing by, she grew even more enraged. She swept everything off her desk to vent her frustration, but Hannah had forgotten that this wasn't her home. The manager saw this and immediately called her into his office, scolding her for a long time. Her superior then ordered Hannah to hand over her work and take a few days off. Hannah went home crying and didn't come to work for the next few days. David came to my company several times, cursing and causing a scene, but never found Hannah. In the end, he broke his word and brought people to Hannah's parents' house. I heard that the moment David walked in, he beat Hannah's parents and demanded they transfer 50,000 yuan to him, or he wouldn't spare their lives. Hannah's parents wanted to call the police, but David threatened them. "This is your daughter's fault, so you must compensate the victim. Calling the police is useless. If you insist on calling the police, I'll probably kill both of you first." When Hannah's mother tearfully called my mother, I felt no pity for them, because what they were enduring was exactly what my family and I had suffered in my previous life. Did Hannah think it was all over? She still underestimated David, thinking she could deal with him using money. But David had a criminal record. After being released from prison, he had struggled hard to marry his wife, so this baby was extremely important to him. Now that Sarah had a miscarriage, David would definitely seek revenge on Hannah. But Hannah had no idea. She had been idle at home for days, and the added threats made her irritable. A few days later, Hannah finally couldn't take it anymore and wanted to invite me to the 1,000 Cups, one drunk bar for late-night drinks. I immediately refused but offered another suggestion. "I'm not feeling too well today, so I can't go with you. Try calling Chloe instead." Hannah merely replied with a distracted then hung up. An hour later, I drove out. When I arrived at 1,000 Cups, one drunk, Hannah and Chloe were drinking alcohol like water. I thought they had fallen out long ago, but unexpectedly, Hannah could still call Chloe to drink with her. Truly, when desperate, one makes do. I looked around a bit and indeed found David sitting quietly in a corner. By this time, Hannah and Chloe had drunk too much. They didn't bother calling a taxi, but stumbled out of the restaurant, supporting each other, into the deserted night street. David seemed a little impatient, waiting. Seeing Hannah and Chloe leave, he slowly followed behind them. A while later, David still hadn't found an opportunity to act. It wasn't until the two women neared an intersection with a small alleyway that David looked around and suddenly lunged, dragging both girls into the alley. His speed was so terrifying that even an outsider like me felt utterly horrified. I parked my car nearly opposite, tilting my head to stare into the alley. Over an hour passed, but there was no movement in the alley. I didn't see David come out, nor Hannah and Chloe. I waited for another hour before I finally saw a figure run out of the alley. It was a man, but not David. He was running and shouting, "Murder! Murder!" These desperate cries woke up the residents in the vicinity. Lights turned on one by one. Some even rushed downstairs to check the alley, but those who entered eventually screamed and fled in terror. Someone called the police. The mouth of the alley was packed with people. Over 10 minutes later, police cars, ambulances, and forensic teams arrived. Moreover, I knew how they had died. Hannah had certainly been raped and strangled to death, her eyes wide open, just like me in my previous life. As the police carried the two white-shrouded bodies out of the alley, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. My stomach cramped slightly. I stepped on the gas and sped away. After suppressing the nausea and driving for about a kilometer, I opened the car door and pulled over to the side of the road, vomiting violently. My eyes stung, and tears streamed down my face. I didn't know whether I should cry or laugh anymore. When my mother received the call from Hannah's mother, she was completely stunned. Mom couldn't believe why someone who had always been healthy could die so suddenly, and moreover, in such an undignified manner. But my mother didn't know that in my previous life, she and my father had also suffered immensely upon hearing that I had been tortured and murdered by David. At that time, my mother was even more devastated than Hannah's mother was now. My mother didn't even know that the person who indirectly caused her daughter's death was her own niece. In this life, I simply didn't follow Hannah's instructions, allowing her to bear the consequences herself. Hannah was not innocent, so I didn't find her pitiful at all. After Uncle learned of Hannah's death, his family and Hannah's parents resumed their old relationship. However, Uncle still couldn't pay Hannah's mother back the 100,000 yuan, because that 100,000 yuan had been spent by Uncle long ago. At that time, my cousin had already married, but Uncle would constantly nag and cause trouble with his daughter-in-law. Not long after, he even encouraged my cousin to divorce. Before she could even have a child, my sister-in-law ran away. My cousin became a divorcee and still hasn't remarried. Perhaps this was their karma for refusing to pay me back in my previous life. News of Hannah's death spread widely throughout the company, giving everyone enough to discuss for days. David was arrested very quickly. He killed 2 people consecutively. 1 bullet was enough to send the villain to the underworld. As for Sarah, she never stepped foot into the company again. I didn't care how her life turned out. I had already avenged myself for my previous life. I resigned and no longer wanted to interact with my former colleagues at the company. After that, I found a new job with a similar salary, but it wasn't as busy as before. Not long after, my parents and I moved into the 4-bedroom apartment. Without Hannah around to cause trouble, our lives passed peacefully and happily. I considered my previous half-life just a dream. That dream taught me that in life, never play the saintly figure, or sooner or later, something bad will happen. It might not kill you, but you'll definitely be resented by others. After all, no one likes to be exploited without fighting back.